The control center is a cathedral of cold, white light and polished chrome. Robotic arms stand like silent soldiers, their lights glowing a steady, confident green. Alyssa Grant, the billionaire CEO, stands with her arms crossed, watching the AI analysis flicker across a massive glass screen. Behind the safety railing, Mark Evans, a single dad in a worn maintenance uniform, speaks in a quiet, steady voice. The system is reading the friction wrong. Alyssa doesn't turn around. I is never wrong, Mark. Suddenly, warning lights pulse amber. The line jolts, then freezes in a synchronized failsafe. The robots didn't break. The bad data did. His name is Mark Evans, 45 years old, a man whose presence in the state-of-the-art facility is as unremarkable as the grease traps he cleans. To the high-level executives and software architects at Grant Robotics, he is a relic of a dying era, a manual worker in a world of digital perfection. Mark is the lead day shift technician, the man responsible for the physical reality of the machines. He checks the sensors, lubricates the joints, and logs the vibrations that no computer seems to care about. He wears a faded charcoal gray uniform, his hands scarred by heat and steel, the hands of a man who understands how things actually move. Every morning at 5 a.m., Mark's world starts in a quiet, two-bedroom apartment that smells like toast and laundry detergent. He spends his first hour of the day checking the battery on Leo's tablet and making sure the boy's favorite blue hoodie is clean. This is his real work. The factory, with its humming servers and cold steel, is just a backdrop to his life as a father. Mark doesn't miss the complexity of high-stakes engineering. He misses the simplicity of being a husband. But since the accident that took his wife 4 years ago, he has poured every ounce of his soul into being the anchor for his son. While Leo finished his breakfast cereal, Mark had been squinting at a printout of the vibration logs from the previous night's test run. He saw the phantom spikes, tiny sub-millisecond pulses that the AI dismissed as signal noise. He recognized the pattern. It was the same harmonic frequency he had studied 20 years ago when he was a lead designer for heavy-lift aerospace systems. To the computer, it was a glitch. To Mark, it was a warning, the sound of metal molecules beginning to tear under a stress they weren't designed to handle. He knew that metal had a memory, and those spikes were the sound of a structural groan that hadn't happened yet. In the high-security safety lounge, 9-year-old Leo sits with his backpack and a handheld game. Leo is Mark's entire universe, his reason for staying sharp in a world that wants him to be a ghost. After the tragedy, Mark traded his ambitious career as a senior systems designer for this steady, low-profile maintenance role. He needed a job that stayed within the lines. He needed to be the man who was always there to pick his son up at exactly 4 p.m. The man who never missed a parent-teacher conference or a weekend trip to the park. He chose the silence of the factory floor over the noise of the boardroom, convinced that being just a dad was a far higher calling than being a titan of the robotics industry. The factory has recently undergone what Alyssa calls a digital revolution. Alyssa Grant, at 41, is a visionary who believes that human intuition is the greatest source of industrial inefficiency. She has spent millions implementing Project Oracle, a deep learning AI designed to optimize every millisecond of production. The AI learns from historical data, adjusts torque in real time, and predicts failures before they can even manifest in the physical world. Alyssa is brilliant, focused, and today, she is under immense pressure. The world's biggest venture capitalists are on site for a live demonstration. If Project Oracle succeeds, Grant Robotics becomes the global standard. If it fails, her reputation and her empire will crumble in the public eye. For the last week, Mark has been watching the data feeds in the maintenance log with a growing sense of unease. He discovered a microscopic deviation between the sensor clusters in the secondary assembly wing. It wasn't a software bug, it was a physical reality. The floor was vibrating at a frequency that the AI interpreted as optimal resonance. But Mark's ear, trained by decades of hearing metal meet metal, told him the bearings were beginning to cry. He filed a report. He marked it as high priority, but the report was buried by the AI ops team. They told him the algorithm had already accounted for environmental noise. They told him he was overthinking a human feeling. Mark didn't argue. He knew the arrogance of people who trust screens more than their own senses. He simply noted the time, checked the fail-safe parameters on his own handheld unit, and prepared for the inevitable. He is a man who knows that you can ignore the truth. You can ignore the warnings. But you cannot ignore the laws of physics. They are the only thing in the world that don't care about your stock price. The demonstration begins with a flourish of digital graphics and soaring orchestral music. The VIP lounge is filled with billionaires and industry analysts, their eyes fixed on the massive monitors as Alyssa Grant takes the stage. Her voice is a masterclass in corporate confidence. "Welcome to the future," she says, her silk suit shimmering under the studio lights. Project Oracle doesn't just manage the machines, it understands them. It removes the guesswork, the fatigue, and the inevitable errors of the human element. Today, we increase production speed by 40% with zero risk to the hardware. Mark stands at the back of the control room, leaning against the cool metal of the safety gate. He isn't watching the graphics. He is watching the floor-level telemetry. The lines on the graph are smooth, calculated, and beautiful. But as the speed begins to climb, Mark feels it. A subtle, rhythmic thrum in the soles of his boots. It's a vibration that hasn't hit the sensors yet, because the AI is programmed to filter out non-critical harmonics to maintain the perfect image for the investors. The floor begins to sing a low, ominous note that vibrates in Mark's molars. Mark steps forward, clearing his throat. The head of AI operations, a young man named Caleb who looks like he's never held a wrench in his life, glares at him. "Mark, not now. We're in the middle of the pitch. Stay back." "There's a data input conflict forming in Wing B," Mark says, his voice low, raspy, and unshakable. "The sensors are reporting inconsistent load-bearing weights. The AI is overcompensating for the tilt. You need to dial back the acceleration before the torque hits the red line." Alyssa hears his voice and turns, her expression one of polite but sharp annoyance. She is used to being the smartest person in the room. "Mark, the AI has conducted 3 million simulations in the last hour alone. It knows the load capacity better than any human ever could. We are on a calibrated path. Please return to your station and let the experts work." The investors nod, whispering to each other, impressed by her unwavering faith in the technology. The production line begins to accelerate. The robotic arms move with a terrifying, fluid grace, swinging heavy carbon fiber components into place with millimetric precision. The counter on the screen begins to climb rapidly. 30% increase, 35, 38. The room is electric with the scent of success and high-grade ozone. But Mark isn't looking at the counter. He is looking at the base of the Wing B robotic mount. The vibration has shifted from a thrum to a shiver. He knows exactly what is happening. Two different sensors, reading the same motor, are giving slightly different timestamps because of a physical alignment issue Mark reported 3 days ago. To a human, it's an obvious lag. To the AI, it looks like the motor is slipping, so it commands more torque to compensate for the lost power. This causes more vibration, which causes more heat, which causes more lag. It is a digital snake eating its own tail, and it's about to choke. "It's going to hit the fail-safe in 10 seconds, Mark whispers to Caleb. Caleb snickers, not even looking up from his keyboard. "The fail-safe is for mechanical emergencies, Mark. The code is perfect. Look at the efficiency rating. We're breaking records." Alyssa is laughing with a lead investor, gesturing to the green status of the entire factory. "We have achieved total synchronization," she declares, her voice filled with pride. And that's when the green turns to a haunting, rhythmic amber. A high-pitched siren, a sound designed to pierce through any factory noise, erupts from the ceiling. The giant monitor flashes a single, terrifying message. "Input conflict detected. Critical discrepancy. In a split second, the entire production line comes to a violent, dead stop. The robotic arms freeze in midair, some of them holding millions of dollars in delicate medical equipment. One arm, holding a titanium casing, oscillates slightly before going rigid. The silence that follows is heavier than the noise. The investors stand up, their faces moving from awe to deep suspicion. The robots didn't crash. They didn't break. They did exactly what they were programmed to do when the reality stopped matching the math. They froze. Project Oracle, the smartest system in the world, had just paralyzed itself in front of its biggest buyers. Alyssa Grant stands at the podium, her hand frozen in the air, the color draining from her face as she stares at the frozen state of her empire. Her vision of the future just hit a wall of cold. Hard fact. The silence in the control center is absolute, save for the frantic, rhythmic clicking of keyboards as the AI team tries to force an override. Caleb is sweating, his glasses sliding down his nose as his fingers fly across his laptop. The model is clean. I'm checking the logic gates. There are no errors. The AI is reporting a sensor reality mismatch. It refuses to move because it thinks the physical environment has changed in a way that violates the laws of its training. Alyssa Grant walks off the stage, her heels clicking sharply on the floor like a death march as she approaches the group. Her voice is a dangerous whisper, the sound of a woman who sees her legacy slipping away. Why is my factory standing still? Fix the model. Now, before the investors walk out that door. We can't just fix it, Alyssa, Caleb cries out in a panic. The AI is protecting the hardware. It sees a conflict it can't resolve. It's like it's looking at two different worlds at the same time, and it doesn't know which one is real. Mark Evans takes a slow, deliberate step into the circle of light. He doesn't look at the code. He doesn't look at the AI model. He looks at the secondary load sensor on the live feed. He points a calloused finger at the timestamp, a finger that has felt the heat of 1,000 engines. You're looking for a ghost in the machine, Mark says, his voice steady and calm as a mountain. But the ghost is on the floor. Caleb, Alyssa, look at sensor 44 and sensor 45. They're reading the same drive shaft. They're supposed to be backups for each other. Caleb scoffs, his ego still trying to stay afloat. Yes, redundant backup. Standard procedure for high-torque operations. What's your point? But they aren't redundant right now, Mark counters. Sensor 44 is mounted directly on the motor housing. Sensor 45 is on the mounting bracket. Because of the heat from the 40% speed increase, the bracket has expanded by 0.2 millimeters. It's tiny, but it's enough. It's created a time-of-flight lag. Sensor 45 thinks the shaft is rotating later than sensor 44. The AI sees the discrepancy, can't reconcile the math, and concludes that the shaft has fractured. So it locks the brakes to prevent a catastrophic explosion that isn't actually happening. The machine is telling the truth, but your setup is lying to it. Mark leaned in, his voice dropping into a register of hard-won experience. I've seen this before, in the 0.8 turbine failures. You can't calibrate for heat with math alone. You have to feel the expansion. He placed his hand on the cold glass of the control console, but his mind was on the factory floor, sensing the microscopic metal fatigue that the sensors were misinterpreting. The software engineers stop typing. They look at each other, then at the technical drawing on the wall. Alyssa looks at Mark, her eyes searching his face for a lie. 0.2 millimeters? The AI should be able to compensate for thermal expansion in its sleep. It can't compensate for a physical vibration it's been told to ignore, Mark says, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It's a printed copy of the report he filed 3 days ago. I told the team the bracket was loose. I told them the vibration would cause a feedback loop at high speeds, but the AI said the vibration was background noise. You taught the machine to ignore the person who actually touches the metal. You taught it that data is the only truth. Alyssa takes the report, her eyes scanning the high priority stamp and the ignored signature at the bottom. She looks at the investors, who are now checking their watches and whispering about reliability issues. She looks at the man in the worn uniform, the man she had dismissed 10 minutes ago. "What do we do?" she asks. It's the first time in her career she has ever asked a maintenance worker for advice. The power in the room has shifted, not through money, but through competence. "We don't change the code," Mark says. "We don't need a new algorithm. We need a wrench. I need to move sensor 45 centimeters to the left, onto the primary housing, so it reads the same vibration as its partner. And I need to tighten the B bracket by half a turn. Give me 5 minutes, and I will finally see the truth." Caleb looks at Alyssa, waiting for her to shoot the idea down. He wants a software fix, something clean. But Alyssa looks into Mark's eyes. She sees a level of certainty that no computer has ever provided. She sees the human element she tried so hard to erase, and she realizes it's the only thing that can save her. "Do it," she commands. Mark grabs his tool bag. He moves onto the factory floor with a rhythmic, efficient pace. He doesn't run. He doesn't panic. He climbs the ladder, his hands moving with the grace of a master craftsman. The crowd in the VIP lounge watches through the glass as the nobody reaches into the heart of the machine. He loosens the bolt, slides the sensor, and tightens the bracket. He taps the metal twice, listening to the ring. Solid. He climbs down and gives a simple thumbs up to the control room. Caleb hits the refresh button on his console. The input conflict message vanishes instantly. The AI reevaluates the environment. The sensors now show a perfect, synchronized one-to-one reading. The fractured shaft logic is gone. "System clear," the AI voice announces, its tone suddenly peaceful. "Requesting reinitialization." Alyssa takes a deep breath. She looks at the investors, then at the screen. "Initiate." The robotic arms hum to life with a low, powerful growl. But this time, the movement is different. It's smoother. The shiver in the floor is gone. The line accelerates back to 40%. In the status light stays a beautiful, unwavering green. The room erupts in applause. But Alyssa Grant isn't looking at the investors. She is watching Mark Evans walk back to the safety lounge, where a little boy is waiting for him with a wide smile. She realizes that the most advanced technology in the world is useless, unless it's verified by the man who knows how to listen to the silence. The demonstration ends as a massive, historic success. The investors sign the intent to fund before they even leave the building. Alyssa Grant should be celebrating. She should be drinking champagne in the penthouse lounge, but she is sitting in her glass office, staring at the report Mark Evans had filed 3 days ago. She realizes that her revolution almost ended in a billion-dollar disaster, not because the AI failed, but because her own ego had created a massive blind spot. She walked to the window, looking out over the sprawling complex. For years, she had viewed her employees as variables to be minimized. She had forgotten that every data point on her screen was born from a physical action in the real world. She had become so enamored with the elegance of the math that she had ignored the messy, beautiful reality of the mechanics. She thought about her father, the man who started this company with nothing but a toolbox and a dream. He would have known that the bracket was loose just by the sound of the hangar door opening. She calls Mark into her office as the sun begins to set over the industrial park. He enters, his cap in his hand, looking like a man who just wants to go home and cook dinner for his son. "Mark, I read your report. All of it," Alyssa says, her voice lacking its usual corporate edge. She looks tired, but human. "My team ignored you. I ignored the system that allowed you to be ignored. I thought I could automate judgment. I thought I could replace the man with the machine. I was wrong." Mark just nods. He isn't looking for an apology. He isn't looking for a promotion. "AI is a tool, Ms. Grant. It's a great one. It can see things I can't. It can calculate things in a second that would take me a lifetime. But it doesn't have skin. It doesn't feel the heat in the metal or the shiver in the floor. It can't tell the difference between a broken shaft and a loose bolt because it only knows what the sensors tell it. And if the sensors are lying, The AI is just a very fast way to make a catastrophic mistake. Alyssa leans back in her chair, looking out at the factory floor where the robots are still working, silent and efficient. She thinks about the billions of dollars she nearly lost, and the man who saved it all with a half-turn of a wrench. The investors asked me how we solved the glitch so fast. I told them we had a human verification layer that the software hadn't fully integrated yet. That's a fancy way of saying a guy with a wrench, Mark smiles, a small, genuine spark in his eyes. It's more than that, Mark, Alyssa says, standing up and walking around her desk. We're updating our entire operating procedure, starting tonight. From now on, Project Oracle doesn't get to override a manual safety report. We are creating a new position, Chief of Operational Integrity, someone who oversees the interface between the AI and the physical world. Someone who isn't afraid to stop the line when the data looks good, but the metal feels wrong. She looks at him, offering a pen. I want you to take the job. It comes with a salary that matches our lead architects, and it comes with the authority to veto any operational increase that you haven't personally verified. I need you to be the conscience of this factory. We need a man who hears the spikes. Mark looks at the pen, then at the window where Leo is waving at him from the lounge. He thinks about the breakfast he wants to make tomorrow. He thinks about the life he's built. I have a son, Miss Grant. I don't do 80-hour weeks. I don't do international travel, and I leave every day at 3:30 p.m. to pick him up from school. If those are the terms, then we have a deal. If the factory needs me at 4, it'll have to wait for the AI to handle it. Alyssa smiles, a real, genuine smile that reaches her eyes. Mark, if today taught me anything, it's that we need you at 3:30 more than we need you at midnight. Your terms are accepted. In fact, we'll build a study area for Leo in the control room. He can learn physics from the man who actually understands them. 6 months later, the Grant Robotics facility is a model of global efficiency, but it doesn't look like the sterile, silent tomb it used to be. There are technicians walking the lines with tablets, talking to the AI, and the AI is talking back. The Oracle system has been updated with a human context module. It no longer just processes data, it asks for confirmation when it detects a physical anomaly that doesn't fit its model. It has learned the value of a gut feeling. Mark Evans is no longer in a faded gray uniform. He wears a sharp, navy blue tech jacket with the company logo. He is currently standing on the floor, watching a new set of robots assemble a high-precision medical turbine. The machines move faster than ever, but the atmosphere is calm, stable, predictable. Leo runs into the control room, his school bag bouncing as he laughs. He doesn't go to a safety room anymore. He has a desk next to his dad's office, filled with Lego sets, science books, and in a miniature robotic arm his dad helped him build. Alyssa Grant walks over, ruffling the boy's hair with a warmth the staff had never seen before. How's the homework, Leo? Did you solve that torque equation? She asks, her voice warm and maternal. Almost. Dad helped me with the friction part, Leo says, beaming with pride. Alyssa looks at Mark, who is currently reviewing a sensor drift report on his screen. The factory is running at 150% capacity, the highest in the industry. But there hasn't been a single failsafe stop in months. They didn't beat the AI, they completed it. They realized that the human element wasn't a source of error. It was the ultimate source of safety. They realized that the most powerful algorithms are the ones that know they have limits. The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows, bathing the factory floor in a golden glow. Alyssa leaned against the railing next to Mark, watching the rhythmic dance of the machinery. You know, Mark, she said softly, the board asked me for a progress report on the AI. I told them the AI is doing great, but it's the human heartbeat of this place that's actually making the profit. I think they finally understood. Mark, we're receiving an award next week for innovative, human-centric automation, Alyssa says, leaning against the railing next to him. They want the CEO to speak about the vision. You should go, Mark says, not taking his eyes off the monitor. You're the one who built the company. No, Alyssa says, shaking her head. I built the machine. You built the trust. We're going together. And Leo is coming too. He's our honorary safety inspector. After all, he's the one who reminded me that 3:30 p.m. is a sacred hour. Finally, Mark lifted his head. A small, tired but happy smile appeared on his face. He looked at the robotic arms, then at his son, then at the woman who had finally learned to listen. The screens are all green. The machines are humming a steady, rhythmic song of progress. The factory is perfect. But the most important thing in the room isn't the AI or the millions of dollars in exports. It's the silence of a man who knows he is exactly where he belongs. The greatest technology in the world isn't the one that replaces us. It's the one that knows when to stop and wait for a human hand to show it the way. Because at the end of the day, data can't love a son, and an algorithm can't feel the truth. If you believe that AI needs a human heart to be perfect, subscribe for more stories where the experts hidden in the shadows save the day. And tell me in the comments, where do you think the human element is most important in our automated world?